In 2015, two students named Mikey Schmidt and Rob Liljeberg were running one of the biggest college drug rings in the world, spanning across 7 major schools and moving at least $21 million worth of product. The empire that these two had created gave them the life they always wanted. They owned expensive supercars, partied nonstop, and were rolling in more cash than they could ever dream of. But that dream turned into their worst nightmare when a fellow student was murdered, all thanks to the drug ring they started. So how did these two create such a massive operation? And more importantly, how did it get someone killed? Well, before he was selling thousands of pills, Mikey Schmidt was a rowdy kid who lived a decently good life growing up in Dunwoody, Georgia, a suburb about 20 miles north of Atlanta. While his father abandoned him from an early age, his mother was, in his words, a literal saint who worked so hard to give me whatever I wanted. She grinded her way up to become the vice president at a market research firm, a job that put food on Mikey's plate, a roof over his head, and a 1990s Mercedes to drive to high school with. However, while being grateful for his mom, he eagerly wanted to make some vice president level money of his own. Now, he wasn't going to go find a job where he put fries in bags. Instead, he wanted to get rich as quickly as possible, which initiated his first step in the world of drug dealing. At just 15 years old, Mikey was living a proud life of drinking and smoking before class, dating the cutest girl at school, and making at least $10,000 selling weed to his boys. Shit, the only downside to his life was that he was 5 feet 0 inches tall, earning him the nickname Little Mikey. Also from his boys. Thankfully, he did hit a growth spurt his senior year, where he shot up 7 inches to 5'7" before graduating and enrolling in the College of Charleston. CFC is located in the city of Charleston, South Carolina, and it was the perfect fit for Mikey. Students here were blessed with beaches to swim at, nice golf courses to play, a super active nightlife with everyone going out at least 4 to 5 times a week, and a nearly 1 to 4 guy to girl ratio at the time. But all of that goodness wasn't even Mikey's top reason for going there. It was the vast array of Greek life the school had, and he wasted no time getting involved. When he first arrived on campus in August of 2013, he went to the Student Activities Information Fair with the sole intent of meeting the guys who were part of the best fraternities on campus, Pi Kappa Alpha and Sigma Alpha Epsilon. These two were widely known as the elite organizations on campus, mainly because, well, most of the members were loaded. They held numerous high-profile social events, including boat charters, nights with bottle service, and many wild parties. With exciting thoughts of partying with these guys for 4 years, Mikey darted past the nerds at the Quidditch booth and headed straight for the SAE table. But on his way there, he ran into someone else, a kid named Rob Liljeberg. Rob, who was dressed in khaki shorts and wielding a Subway footlong, was sitting at the Kappa Alpha order table, a frat that was much different than the two elites. They were considered sort of a middle-tier org, with rowdy, albeit less expensive parties, and members who couldn't keep up with their SAE or Pike classmates professionally. Mikey had heard of these guys from older kids at his high school and his new roommate, but still, he wasn't interested. Until he noticed Rob was baked out of his mind. He saw Rob's bloodshot eyes locked on his sub, enough evidence for him to know he was on the moon, and asked if he smoked. Rob replied, "Yeah, we burn," and invited him to his house to hit his bong. Forgetting about the SAE booth, Mikey simply responded, "Word," sparking the start of a new relationship that would change their lives forever. After the duo smoked, they started to realize that they actually had a lot in common. They both drove the same 1990s Mercedes SL Coupe. They were both goated on the sticks and both enjoyed trading dick and fart jokes. However, what really brought them together the most was their shared love of drug dealing. While burning together, Mikey noticed several vacuum-sealed bags full of weed stashed in red tomato cans in Rob's room. And when he asked about them, he found out that Rob was selling several pounds of weed just like he had been doing since he was 15. The camaraderie made in that room instantly sparked a super strong friendship, and Rob wasted no time introducing his new friend to the rest of the KA brothers. While the other brothers initially saw Mikey as a tryhard who was a little full of it, Rob's unwavering support for him secured Mikey a bid to pledge. But getting through pledgeship here was no easy task. First, pledges were assigned mandatory tasks to do all throughout the fall semester. Stuff like cooking, cleaning, running errands, and DDing on weekends. It didn't matter if you had class, you had to do these things. But this basic nanny shit wasn't even close to the worst of it. Mikey and his pledge class had to endure lineups, surprise meetings where the actives essentially just harassed the shit out of them. At these lineups, they made him drink pledge juice, a nasty-ass drink consisting of cat food, dip spit, and other stuff if they incorrectly answered questions wrong. They introduced them to the bourbon circle, where pledges had to kill 7 or 8 handles of Evan Williams, which was about 20 shots a person. Physical pain was a great part of lineups too, like when Mikey had to lay his elbows and toes on bottle caps, watching them bleed until the elders allowed him to stand up. But if you can believe it, all of this crescendoed into the worst and final week of pledgeship, Hell Week. Hell Week essentially included everything I talked about before, but pushed to the limits. During the week, pledges were not allowed to leave the main KA house for any reason besides going to class. They couldn't use their phones, weren't allowed to take naps or showers, and had to make do with the horrific sleeping situation. Like how Mikey did when he was forced to sleep in the dirt underneath the house for 2 nights, catching a 103-degree fever. It was quite literally hell, but it was all worth it thanks to the very last night of the week, Kidnap Night. On this chilly fall evening, Mikey and his class had the opportunity to get back at the active who was harshest to them during their pledgeship by literally kidnapping them. This organization is so fucked up. The gang chose someone, bought copious amounts of duct tape, got drunk, and drove to the victim's house where they bound his legs and hands tight. Mikey, who was the getaway driver, sped off with the active in his trunk, screaming for help. But the fun didn't last long. While trying to get away, Mikey was pulled over after swerving around a pedestrian and failing to signal. And when the cop heard a human squealing like a pig in his trunk, it's obvious to say he was punished. Mikey got hit with reckless driving and driving without a license, which seems light considering he literally kidnapped someone. But the charges were the least of his worries. You see, while the cops had him in custody, they berated him with every question under the sun about marijuana, which seems odd considering he hadn't smoked or had any weed on him. Still, this interrogation and the fact that he now had a police record piqued Mikey's anxiety, enough to warn Rob as soon as he got out to move his red tomato cans somewhere safe in case the cops came to the house with a search warrant. And so the cans were stashed away. Mikey officially became a KA after an insane night, and the duo could finally take a deep breath and enjoy some wild parties as equals. Well, for about a semester. While living it up in the spring semester of his freshman year, Mikey's focus on academics dwindled to about nothing. He was mainly locked in on A, partying his ass off with KA, and B, running a mini weed dealing scheme in his freshman dorm. As a result of his priorities, he frequently missed classes and never did homework, netting him an outstanding 2.4 GPA and no signs of improving. He was left with no choice but to drop out, leaving his fun lifestyle and, more importantly, his new best friend behind. He packed all of his shit and moved back to Dunwoody, where his mom and stepfather were rightfully pissed off at their son. $30,000 a year and you didn't even go to class, his stepfather yelled, and back and forth fights left Mikey forced to enroll in online classes at Georgia State's Perimeter Community College. Of course, a random community college didn't bring the fun or boozing that Mikey had a taste of at CFC. But that didn't mean he was gonna give up the drugs. Not doing drugs exactly, but selling them. You see, before Mikey left school, he made an agreement with his BFF Rob to start selling together. Rob at this point was getting big mail orders of bud from a woman in California and was making pretty decent margins on his investments. But with Mikey's newfound free time, Rob could sell him some of his weed and let Mikey make some extra cash too. This was perfect timing, especially for Mikey, who had just started a valet job at the Tongue and Groove nightclub, a gig where he met a lot of rich people who were interested in his product. This marks the very first instance of Mikey and Rob's operation, but it would only get much bigger thanks to the rapid rising popularity of a new drug in town. And that drug was Xanax. The white bars had been floating around the campus of CFC since 2012, mainly used as a hangover cure by frat bros after hitting the town for 5 days straight. However, as the years passed, they became the primary choice in the drug economy, not only for how great people felt when taking them, but because they were easy to sell from a dealer's perspective. They were odorless, lightweight, and only a Schedule IV drug, meaning being caught with large quantities of them resulted in less severe sentencing. While Rob was mainly a weed guy, he couldn't help but notice the skyrocketing demand for Xanax and quickly made them a priority in his scheme with Mikey. The issue was, he didn't have a Xanax guy to buy from, which is where Zachary Kligman came in clutch. Zachary was a 24-year-old based in Charleston who consisted mostly of knees and elbows, described as being a sweet, soft guy who really didn't come off as a big-time drug dealer. But contrary to his appearance, Zachary was a part of the biggest source of counterfeit manufactured Xanax pills in Charleston, also known as GG249 bars. He and his team pressed 500,000 pills a month, netting the operation roughly $300,000 in profit by selling Xanax in bulk to guys like Rob. Rob would go to Zach and buy around 10,000 pills at a time for about 70 cents each and be able to offload all of them in a week, making around a 300% profit on his investment. And one of the main guys Rob offloaded to was Mikey, who would take these pills and sell them not only to his connections at his valet job, but also at other big colleges like UGA and Ole Miss. People were eating these pills up, quite literally. The demand for Xanax was stronger than anything Mikey had ever sold. And boy, did it make him stinky rich. Mikey went from a relatively broke ex-college kid to someone who owned an Infiniti G35, a drop-top BMW, and paying about $35,000 in rent a year for a luxury apartment in downtown Atlanta. Also, at his new apartment, he would rest from a day of hanging out with celebrities like Waka Flocka Flame, who he met through a new job he started working as the right-hand man for a big Atlanta promoter. His weed and backwood rolling skills were too good for Waka and his boys not to hang out with him, which only gave Mikey more great connections. Gotta hand it to him, quite the turnaround for the kid. The new trio of Rob, Zach, and Mikey was operating like a well-oiled machine, each making hundreds of thousands of dollars per month in their early 20s. So with a now legitimate business in the works, it only made sense for Mikey to make his grand return to CFC to continue scaling the drug ring while being closer to Rob and Zach. And boy, did it get bigger. But before we get into how big their operation got, I want to share with you a product that has changed the way I work forever. I'm talking about the PLAUD Note. And boy, let me tell you, this sleek device has changed the way myself and thousands of others work. At its core, the Note is essentially a genius AI meeting secretary, a note taker that records any conversation you want from meetings, lectures, calls, and more. With one click, it can record up to 30 hours nonstop, and unlike your phone, you don't need to worry about running out of battery, storage, or having a call cut you off. It will take that audio and automatically upload it to the PLAUD app, and this is where the real magic happens. The app generates a full transcript with speaker labels so you know exactly who said what. You'll find an AI-powered summary that lists all of the most important info from your audio file. Everything from a detailed summary that highlights what mattered in the combo, amazing insights and data extraction, and an actionable to-do list based on what the conversation was. There are also thousands of note templates you can choose from, so whether you're in engineering, a finance bro, in the medical field, or whatever else, you can make your notes tailored to what you're talking about. This bad boy would have been perfect for me in college. I mean, I couldn't pay attention to shit in class because I was too busy scribbling down notes in my chicken scratch ass handwriting. It's also clutch in a work setting, like for catching all of the key points in a client meeting you may have missed because, once again, you were too busy trying to write everything down in the moment. If I had the PLAUD Note, I would have been able to stay fully present in what I was learning while my sleek, sexy secretary was taking way better, more detailed notes than I ever could. And don't worry, those notes are protected thanks to PLAUD having end-to-end data encryption and meeting top global privacy standards like SOC2, GDPR, HIPAA, and EN 18031. Get PLAUD today through the link in the description or the pinned comment. They're having a site-wide price drop going on right now, so don't miss it. Okay, back to the boys. At the end of summer break in 2015, Mikey packed his things from his parents' house and his penthouse and made the 5-hour drive back to what felt like his real home. Now, Mikey wasn't actually back in CFC. I mean, it's pretty clear he wasn't academically smart whatsoever. So instead of begging the dean to let him back in, he enrolled in online classes once again at another new college called Trident Technical and rented out another high-end apartment in Charleston at 930 Noma, meaning he was paying 2 luxury leases at around $70,000 a year for no reason. Like I said, not academically smart, but the high price tag was worth it to him. He was back being involved in KA, hazing pledges and partying his ass off like the good old days. The only difference this time around was that he had way more money to have fun with, but he was hungry for more. Trying to figure out ways to make even more money with Rob and Zach, Mikey had a genius revelation. Start selling cocaine. You see, there weren't many, if any, small-time cocaine dealers on Charleston's campus, mainly because the trade was largely controlled by organized crime. But that didn't deter Mikey one bit. Instead, he sought out these people to make connections with them so he could bring some pure Colombian nose candy to the masses. Now don't fret, Mikey wasn't dumb enough to go cold calling these guys. He already had a connection thanks to his rapper friends in Atlanta. From them, he met a guy by the name of Uncle. Uncle was a middle-aged white man who spoke fluent Spanish and had a great relationship with the cartel, so much so that they gave Unc the best wholesale prices possible for their product. And when Unc heard that his boy Mikey wanted in on the cocaine business, he was more than happy to cut him in on these Costco-level deals. And so, in no time, Mikey was driving bricks of pure Peruvian booger sugar in a Toyota Prius with a baby on board sticker from Atlanta to Charleston, then selling it to Rob in bulk so he could sell it for profit too. At this point, the trio's network was near perfect. Rob would sell Mikey's cocaine in bulk to Zach, and Zach would sell his Xanax in bulk to Mikey and Rob, creating a lucrative structure by providing all parties access to wholesale drug prices. And with a well-established multi-level marketing type of pyramid involving dozens of other students and fraternity members driving their drugs across schools, these three boys were on top of the world. A low estimate suggests that their entire operation made them around $21 million, pushing hundreds of thousands of Xanax pills, hundreds of pounds of weed, and cocaine by the kilogram every month. The now 7 school-wide operation literally made them too much money, forcing them to bury millions on farmland, open Bitcoin wallets with millions, and even launder money in their own financials at KA. But of course, they spent this bread too. Mikey himself bought 5 sports cars and would consistently spend tens of thousands at nightclubs, strip clubs, and on clothes. Rob opted to save most of his money, but Zach was swiping away like Mike, buying a nice car for himself and a slew of military-grade weapons like a compact pistol, an assault rifle, and a TAC-D grenade launcher to attach to his rifle. What the fuck? Like, are you planning on going to war? Well, whether they were getting ready for combat or not, the fellows were well set and saw no signs of slowing down, until a kid named Patrick Moffley made headlines. And this news would result in a devastating turn of events for the trio and their drug ring. Patrick grew up in an affluent neighborhood as the son of a luxury real estate developer and was strikingly similar to Mikey. He was also a super rowdy kid, known as a class clown and a dumb risk taker. For example, he once broke into his drug dealer's house and stole his weed, leading to violent threats against his family and his dad paying off the deal. But that didn't stop him from getting involved in dealing, as when he enrolled in the College of Charleston in 2015, his main focus was selling weed to, quote, make my parents proud that I'm making it on my own. You know, I doubt that made them happy at all, but regardless, he was making money, and he would eventually start to make even more after he joined Zach's part of the trio's drug ring. He was oddly good at packaging and selling Xanax, cocaine, and other drugs in resealed Starburst and Skittles bags, and at one point it looked like Patrick was right on track to bring in boatloads like the boys. However, his fortunes would take a nosedive after he was caught selling 13 ounces of cocaine at a USC tailgate. This brought serious charges onto him, facing a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 to 30 years without parole. He was released on bond, returned home to his family's farm, and spent the better part of a month battling Xanax withdrawals and panic attacks. And on top of his shitty situation, Zach cut him out of the operation, fearing Patrick would rat on him to lessen his sentence. As the long, gruesome, and lonely days went by awaiting Patrick's trial, his dad convinced him to return to CFC for a little while, as his roommates were concerned about him and his unpaid utilities. Patrick wasn't going to turn down an opportunity to socialize, so on March 3rd, 2016, he briefly moved back in and paid his utilities. And the next day, he was murdered. Police arrived at his college house after a call from his roommates, and what they found was shocking. Barely alive, Patrick was on the floor with a gunshot wound in his chest and sitting in a pool of hundreds of white pills, all of them marked GG249. After investigations took place, it was found that the reason for his murder was a drug robbery gone wrong, and the man who shot him, Charles Mungen III, was eventually caught. But the Charleston police still had one unanswered question: who sold Patrick these pills? And in seeking the answer, they would unravel one of the biggest drug rings to ever take place on a college campus. After the tragedy of Patrick's death, Detective Patrick Gill of the Charleston Special Investigations Unit, along with the FBI, CIA, the US Postal Service, and more, launched an operation with the sole purpose of breaking up the trio's drug ring. Their first problem, though, was, well, they didn't even know these three dudes were running it or who was involved at all. They did have one hot lead, though: Jake Poshik. In late 2015, Jake had been caught dealing Xanax in a public park and was hit with numerous possession with intent to distribute charges. He didn't budge much in cooperation, but after the SIU raided his girlfriend's apartment, he knew they weren't fucking around and eventually told them a name: Zachary Kligman. Between then and the day Patrick was shot, police had been monitoring Zach's primary stash house, known as the Treehouse, with a hidden camera. Problem was that Patrick and his forces didn't see much sketchy shit going down on the footage over the course of these months, so they put Zach on the back burner. But when the incident with Patrick happened, they fired back up the tapes to see if Zach was reacting to the news. And sure enough, he was. Within minutes of the shooting, Patrick's roommate Fireball, who was also heavily involved in Zach's operation, texted him to move his clothes. Code to move any and all illegal shit out of the treehouse. Zach rushed to his stash house and moved his military weaponry, thousands in cash, and millions of pills to an extra space storage unit as fast as he could. And the SIU saw all of it. The surveillance footage gave them all they needed to track down the unit, which when they seized it contained $25,000, laptops, ledgers, his firearms, and nearly 7,000 grams of Xanax pills. Zachary was the first one to go down, but he was not going to go down without a fight. Facing several severe charges and decades in prison time, he wasted no time cooperating with the SIU. He first tried to rat on Eric Hughes, one of the other main guys in his counterfeit Xanax factory. Eric was on top of it though, seeing Zach had a mugshot published online and completely cut him off. So Zach turned to the next best person to take down: Rob. He told Patrick that Rob was not only one of his primary Xanax customers, but also his main source of cocaine. The SIU gladly took this info and set up a controlled buy between Zach and Rob, where Rob would sell Xanax a pound of Colombian. Zach, with a new codename Mr. Sorry, arranged to meet Rob on April 22, 2016 near CFC's campus to buy the powder. But little did Rob know, Zach would pull up in a completely bugged Cadillac rigged head to toe in hidden cameras and microphones. Rob handed over the cocaine in a popcorn bag and didn't suspect a thing, until immediately after the exchange went down and he was seized by the police. Rob was now in the exact same predicament as Zach. He faced serious charges and serious prison time, and just like Zach, he was eager to do anything he could to get out of it, even if it meant turning on his best friend. His friend who he instantly bonded with the day they met, his friend that partied with him to their heart's desire, his friend who was like a brother to him. Rob threw his entire friendship with Mikey in the trash and snitched on him to no end. Rob, assuming the codename Hunter Thompson, provided Patrick and the SIU with a year's worth of text messages between himself and Mikey detailing drug movements, money laundering, and their operation philosophy. In addition, he set up planned and recorded phone calls, continuing to collect even more info to build a serious case against his ex-BFF. Meanwhile, Mikey was tweaking like he had never tweaked before. It wasn't because he suspected Rob was trying to snitch on him, but because he found Zach's mugshot online. Even though Zach still owed Mikey around $14,000, he was more anxious over the fact that he was in custody, fearing he had been released and would snitch on him any day now. Rob tried to calm him down, offering to be his pledge and sell Mikey's cocaine until the money was paid off. Rob successfully convinced a paranoid Mikey to meet up with him on his graduation weekend in May of 2016, selecting the Vendu Hotel rooftop as the place to exchange a batch of Mikey's product. That day, Mikey's anxiety peaked, and he called Rob, begging him, "Dude, I love you like a brother. I'll do anything you need, but don't set me up." Rob reassured him, "I owe you money, not he." Rob then met Mikey on the rooftop while wearing a wire. 2 days after the exchange, Mikey was pulled over while driving to his parents' home for Mother's Day and promptly arrested by none other than Detective Patrick Gill. During interrogations, Gill revealed the existence of the cooperating informant, Hunter Thompson, and presented documentation listing Mikey's name alongside the informant's many times. This material, as we know, included dozens of phone calls, texts, and the crucial wire recording from the Vendu rooftop. And right in that moment, Mikey realized that Rob was Hunter and snitched on him. And his subsequent consequences from him snitching were not light by any means. After the SIU's months-long investigation had settled, a total of 8 kids were charged, including all 3 of our main trio. It was now time for sentencing, and unfortunately for Mikey, he was suspect number 1. Because Rob and Zachary had been so cooperative, they generally avoided a lot of the heat from the prosecution. But Mikey, not agreeing to cooperate and having loads of Rob's evidence against him, was about to get slammed by the book. Even though Mikey hired 4 different attorneys for his multiple charges, including one who was known for getting rappers out of trouble, he received a 10-year sentence without parole after he pled guilty. This did seem like a small win though, as he was facing a minimum 25-year sentence just like his peers. But Rob ended up getting less than 24 months, and Zach only received 2 years of probation because he had served time before in a separate case. Mikey was stung by this news, but hey, at least he had time to forget about it at his going away party. That's right, Mikey went out with a bang. 2 days before being incarcerated, Mikey and an entourage of KA members, 808 Mafia members, and other friends took on a wild night at a high-end lobster bar and a strip club before he was checked into Kirkland Correctional Institution on May 1st, 2019. He was later moved to the Watery River Correctional Institution, where to this day is sweating through Xanax withdrawals and reflecting on who he thought was his best friend. I mean, it's probably more of a pride thing. Like when he wakes up, he looks in the mirror and thinks, I'm a fucking rat. He also has one final looming regret. I should have been an SAE. This story is based on the outstanding book Among the Bros by Max Marshall. Please click the link in the description to check out his amazing investigative journalism. Also, if you want to hear another story about teens running a drug ring, click this to hear the story of Timothy Brooks and Neil Scott, the kids who ran a massive private school drug ring.